Hey now, and welcome to Quantum Drive. I'm Rob.
I'm Katie.
And our ongoing mission is to discuss every episode of the Orville.
Today we are discussing Season 2, Episode 2, Primal Urges, which was written by Wesley Wild and directed by Kevin Hooks.
Some new names.
I know, two new names.
I like to see it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a new review.
Yay!
This one comes from Pia Loves Music, who says, the best Orville podcast out there. It goes on to say, I love everything about this podcast, from the amazing and wonderful hosts, to the trivia tidbits, to the insightful and fun commentary on each episode, to the amazing interviews with people involved with producing the show. I can't say enough good things about the hands down best Orville podcast out there. Keep up the good work, Katie and Rob.
Oh my God, that is honestly some of the nicest stuff that someone could say about the podcast.
It's very enthusiastic. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you for your review. I don't know. It's really nice to see that people are enjoying what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Write more of them if you want.
You can also, if you'd like to, send us feedback by emailing quantumdrive@thegeekgeneration.com. On Twitter, you can follow us at quantumdrivepod. And if you'd like to join us on Discord, you go to thegeekgeneration.com/Discord, and we have a Quantum Drive channel on there where you can talk about the show and the Orville itself. Before we talk about the episode, Katie's got trivia.
I sure do. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that a science consultant, Andre Bormanis, said the spectrum of the red giant star that appears in the first part of the show is actually the real spectrum from a star.
Really?
And I thought that was really neat.
Yeah. I
think it's a really interesting thing when the science matches up in like a fictional world.
Mm-hmm. And that they put the work in.
Yeah. Plus it looked really good.
Oh.
I was like just mesmerized during that whole opening sequence. I was just like, I could look at this all day.
They're some of the best space scenes we've seen in the show so far.
Mm-hmm. Like when and I don't want to like get ahead of ourselves, but the evaporation of the atmosphere, like all of that was really phenomenal.
Super cool.
So this is a fun fact. There are gloves that Bortus wears in this episode, and I believe it's in the unique spacesuit he wore going down to the planet's surface. And they said it is an Icon Hypersport Pro short glove with the black knuckles just painted white.
So like an athletic glove?
I believe so. I think it's interesting when props come from our world and they just change one little thing about it.
Yeah, we've seen some of that repurposing. We had talked about the binoculars that Gordon used before.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a very popular sports glove. If you look it up, they're about $65 to $90. I looked into it a little bit, but it is interesting that you can take things from our world and just change one thing, and then it's like, ooh, it's futuristic now.
Totally.
An interesting thing is an actress named Nana Visitor, who played Major Kira on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
She was originally supposed to play Minister Thies.
Yeah.
But she didn't get the role because her agent forgot to tell her about it.
That is a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what kind of conversation she and her agent had after that.
I'm sure it wasn't a nice one. I actually saw an interview where she talked about this, and she did not seem even thrilled at this point with the fact that she missed out on being on the Orville. So I'm hoping they find a spot for her in the future.
I hope so, too. I mean, it's a sad story, and she's such a big part of Deep Space Nine that I think she deserves a spot, maybe, in a future episode, hopefully.
Anytime we see Star Trek alum on the Orville, it's super exciting.
Mm-hmm. So we all know and loved and met a new character this episode, Lieutenant Unk. He was secretly performed by Seth MacFarlane. I believe it was just the vocals.
Yeah.
But I thought that was very interesting going into this episode and seeing what he was saying and stuff. But
yeah, you would never know based on the voice that that's Seth MacFarlane, but super cool.
No. Yeah, I thought that was neat. So there is a scene in one of the erotic simulations with Bortus, and there's a prison guard. The prison guard is played by actor Jude B. Lanston, and apparently he struggled to spit convincingly on Macon with water that he told the actor to just spit on him directly.
Oh my God.
And I was like, that's gross. But also, I guess if you're trying to get the scene done, you just got to do what you got to do.
That, and to be honest, he has so many prosthetics on that it's almost like a shield.
I mean, I'm sure you can't like move your mouth in the same way.
Yeah.
With like prosthetic Mocklin makeup on. So they improvised. I thought that was Kudos to them. This was also interesting. Peter Macon, who plays Bortus, watched this episode with his mother.
Oh.
And he said that it was a very not comfortable experience. And he's quoted to say, "We were just super silent the whole episode. I felt 14 all over again."
Oh, man. That's like when you go to the movies with your parents and you don't know that there's going to be a sex scene and then it's super uncomfortable.
And yeah, I could see that. I think it's interesting that, like, hey, Mom, got a new episode out. Want to watch it with me? Just
also, like, you were in this, so you know what it's about.
I hope that he, like, prepped her. Like, just so you know, Mom, there's, like, some stuff in this. So that's all I have for trivia and facts this episode. But there are a couple little notable guest stars that I found. The person who walks by is just a crew member. The unnamed ensign who says, "Hi, Commander," to Bortus is actually associate producer Aaron McPherson.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I thought that was neat.
Another crew inclusion.
Mm-hmm. And then the person who did end up playing Minister Thies is an actress named Leslie Farah. And I was like, she looks so familiar. And I felt she was notable because I watched Pretty Little Liars. And there's no shame in that. But she was Veronica Hastings. She was a mother of one of the characters on the show. And she's done a lot of other parts in very various shows, but I thought that was neat that she was in this one too.
I have not seen Pretty Little Liars, but I guess that is for me your One Tree Hill. So
yes, yeah, I just watched all of it, and I mean, it's a show that you start it, you cannot stop.
Yeah.
You get caught up in the drama. So those are all the guest stars from this week's episode.
All right, getting into the episode. On the bridge of the Orville, the crew is watching an exploding red supergiant star slowly destroy the last remaining planet in its system. Bortus asks for permission to leave as his shift ends in 15 minutes, and he's not feeling well. Ed comments that it's the third time this week he's done that.
There was also another moment on the bridge where Isaac mentions, I think Alara mentioned, like, oh, that poor little planet kind of thing. And Isaac was talking about, I don't know why humans humanize inanimate objects. And I was like, I do that, though. Like, my car, I've named Data. No surprise there. It's a green car. It's Data.
It's even funnier that Isaac says that. And yet, what do we all do to Isaac?
I humanize him.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting because it is something innately human in me that I like to humanize things around me.
Mm-hmm.
So... But I really enjoyed the discussion on this episode about, I don't know, with Isaac's interactions with people and understanding the human race a little bit more.
Yeah. I know we mentioned it already, but I had written a note that, like, what an opening shot. And every shot that includes the star in this episode is just amazingly done. It
was really, honestly, beautiful. Like, yes, this planet is being swallowed up by this giant, but it just looks really good.
Yeah, it really, really does.
I could watch space, just like space, any simulations, anything. I could just watch it for hours. And so if they had just that on the screen for the whole episode, I would have been fine.
As Bortus is walking through the corridor, he gets a call from Clyden asking him when he'll be home. Bortus tells him that he must go work late again. As he approaches the environmental simulator, he looks around quickly before going in.
But Clyden made pudding.
We'll have pudding later.
We'll have pudding later. Clyden has always come across as a very aggressive mate. And I mean, I understand. He's just more, I don't know, he wants to spend time with Bortus. And it made me sad that Bortus was lying to Clyden.
Yeah. Is this the first time we've seen someone receiving a communication by using like a wrist activated thing?
I think so, because there isn't a lot of personal phone calls, I would say. Yeah, I think that's the first time that it's activated by a wrist device.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing it earlier, but just like Trek, it makes me wonder, like, is Bortus the only one that can hear that? If he's the only one that can hear that, how? Like, you have all those questions. It's the same thing with just like pushing the comm badge. Like, is that just for you? Why is it sometimes other people can hear and sometimes they can't? There's a lot of questions with that from just the technical standpoint.
Maybe there's a chip that just gets installed at some point.
It's very possible.
Mm-hmm. And then depending on who's calling, if they select broadcast to everybody or broadcast to just this person, maybe there's just an option where you call.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's very fascinating. I'd love to have someone explain that to me at some point.
Oh, me too.
At least what the thought process is behind it. Inside the simulator, Bortus begins a personal program that takes place at night near a campfire. Another Mocklin approaches him, and the two romantically embrace. Later, Bortus arrives in his quarters and finds Clyden already lying down for the evening. He wakes up and complains to Bortus about how many hours he's been working lately. Both don't want to argue, and Clyden asks Bortus to share the sexual event. Bortus refuses, claiming to be too tired, which frustrates Clyden.
Because we have the information about what Bortus is doing, it makes me a little sad.
Mm-hmm.
But Clyden is so aggressive. I mean, but I think it's just how Mocklins are with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably just the way they communicate. It just sounds more hostile.
Yeah.
Than say, like, I mean, honestly, it's better. I'm thinking of, like, most typically those kind of situations where the person's like, why are you not talking to me? And, oh my God, what's happening? And instead it's just like, I've missed you. I would like to have the sexual event kind of thing. And I think that's kind of an interesting look into Mocklins, but it's also an interesting view of the situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm disappointed in Bortus.
I am too.
Yeah. I found I felt sad because I was like, and he's lying. Like, that's the thing too, is he's lying about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. This might be an awkward question to ask, but I feel like a simulation is so different than watching something through a screen.
Because he's an active participant.
Yeah. And there's sensations and it's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's different than, I don't know. So I wrote a question like, is it cheating?
I would say technically no.
Yeah.
But it's still not the best thing, as we can clearly see.
Because it is made up, but...
Can you technically cheat when there is really no other person involved?
True. It's an interesting discussion point just because, like, it's different. Because in our society, it's just, most of the time, it's a computer screen.
Right.
But in this reality, in this world, it's a simulation with things you can touch and feel and come up with, and yeah.
I somehow had a thought we would get into this conversation involving this.
Yeah.
So, okay, consider this then. Let's say it wasn't a simulation and it was a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Is that cheating?
I guess the computer in our reality is a robot. So it's, I guess, no, but it creates a different parallel because there's more to it than just like clicking a few buttons.
Right. I'm distilling it down to its simplest terms. Because if it's really just a projection, because that is kind of what it is. It's just a solidified projection.
Yeah.
So that can't possibly be cheating. Now, if it started to go in a weird direction where, like, I don't know, you're a chief engineer on a starship and you fall in love with it, like other shows might have shown us before, then now feelings are getting involved and that becomes maybe something different.
I just thought this was a very interesting concept for an episode because I don't really feel like it's been done.
No.
And so in my head, I was like sitting there like, how are Rob and I going to talk about this? But I was very interested in how the conversation kept going on the episode. But mostly I was just disappointed that Bortus was lying to Clyden.
Yeah. Also, I'm not at all surprised that Mocklins have a very formal sounding name for sex at all.
The sexual event.
Share the sexual event. They propose it so formally.
I know.
The next morning at the breakfast table, Clyden asks Bortus to make more time for him. When Bortus says they'll discuss it later, Clyden gets angry and cites Ed and Kelly's divorce as a lesson that they should pay attention to avoid a similar fate. As he leaves for his shift, Bortus agrees to share the evening meal.
I also thought it was interesting because they did focus on Topa a lot during this because Clyden was upset, like banging the table. And it's very much like human in a way where in our society, how the parents are can affect the children. And I mean, I kind of side with Clyden. He just wants the family to be together more. And I think I don't side with Bortus because he's like, I'm working late. The captain's having me work so many hours, but he's instead sneaking away to the simulation.
It would be a totally different situation if Bortus was telling the truth and he was actually working a ton. But the fact that he's lying about it to go basically masturbate in the simulator is the problem.
Which, when you really break it down, Yeah, I feel like I would have more sympathy for Bortus if it was, in fact, like the captain's just running him ragged on the bridge.
Yeah.
But it's not that.
Yeah. As the crew continues to observe the planet, Isaac's scans discover the possibility of large amounts of dysonium deposits beneath the surface. He and Lamar head to engineering to modify the tractor beam to be able to collect it once the planet breaks up. Bortus asks to leave early again, this time to spend the evening with Clyden. He appears to be headed in that direction, but turns around and once again enters the simulator. This time, a program puts Bortus in the role of a prisoner who's willing to do anything to be released by the Moclan Guard.
I just the way that the prison guard walked too.
Yes, I had a note about that too.
Yeah, I was just like, the simulations were really well done in the sense that they're very over the top porn scenarios.
Yeah, basically.
And I thought it was really funny that Bortus is just in his Union uniform. Just like,
he takes no time to get into the role play either.
No, he's just like, all right, let's do this thing. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it.
I thought that one, like you said, this is probably the least formal Moclan we've seen. In the way that he talks and the like heavy swagger he's got going on in his walk. And Bortus is so into the role play that he's using a fake name, Cheston.
I know that. Yeah. Cheston. Of all the names, Cheston.
It's very funny. I did find it interesting that he seemed to have every intent of doing what he said he was going to do, too. And then just at some point, walking back to his quarters, he was like, I can't fight the urge. And he just goes to take care of it.
That's the point where you go, oh, he's like addicted to it.
Yeah, he's got a problem.
He's got a problem. It's crossed the line where it's affecting his life now. And he couldn't resist the urge to go to the simulation and just all the scenarios he's got lined up.
He's prepared.
I mean, he's prepared.
Back in his quarters, Bortus apologizes for being late. Despite Clyden saying he's been waiting for hours, Bortus insists he must go to bed. Clyden again asks to share the sexual event, which Bortus again refuses. As Bortus begins to fall asleep, Clyden approaches the bed and plunges a dagger into his chest.
The first time I watched this episode, I was like, oh my God, they're killing Bortus?
Yeah.
And I had like a physical reaction like, oh my, what? I don't kill Bortus, please. And watching it back this time, I knew like it's the divorce. But it made me feel like, oh, no one's safe.
It's all of a sudden it's Game of Thrones in here.
It's Game of Thrones. It's The Walking Dead. Like there's an everybody's fair game. But I think it's really interesting that Moclans can divorce each other by essentially murdering the other person.
Yeah, that's a little extreme, but I suppose that is typical of their culture. Everything's a little extreme and a little aggressive. And again, very Klingon in a way.
Yeah. The other thing, too, was Bortus got back to the room after like hours.
Yeah.
So he wasn't like gone for 30 minutes or whatever. He was gone. And the table was set and Topa was already in bed. And like it just, Clyden is kind of hard for me to empathize with. But I was like, I feel bad for Clyden in this episode. Though I feel like Bortus is a little bit more wavy on Moclan culture. And Clyden's very much like, this is how we do things. And so it's on brand for Clyden to stab him.
Absolutely. My brand is full on stabbing. When I saw the stabbing for the first time, actually, because they cut to a commercial like right after it, I honestly thought they were going to have him come back with that like that gasp of waking up from a nightmare.
I thought he was legit dead.
Like, I didn't think what was happening was real. And then when they're in sickbay, I'm like, oh my God.
He actually got stabbed. Yeah.
In sickbay, Dr. Finn and her team are rushing to save Bortus' life and barely manage to bring him back from the brink of death. Upon awakening, Bortus tells them that they shouldn't have saved him, as Clyden was simply divorcing him, and terminating your mate is the way that Moclans go through with it.
Do you think on a Union ship they would have known this about their culture, though?
I'm wondering how many Moclans are in the Union.
Yeah.
Because so far, Bortus is the only officer we've seen that's a Union officer. I don't know if it's a widespread thing. They really haven't touched on that at all.
No, because I was thinking there's got to be... Moclans are not an elusive alien race.
Right.
Like, they're prevalent. I was like, this probably would be pretty common and controversial, kind of like the gender change of their babies.
I wonder if Moclan divorces just are not that common. I mean, if you have to go to those extremes, one would think that you do everything you possibly can to make it work.
Yeah. And I wonder if, because I feel like the gender change isn't super talked about either until Topa.
Right.
And so I feel like maybe it's just kind of, the Mocklins kind of keep it under wraps.
I feel like they keep a lot of things under wraps.
Mm-hmm. I think they have secrets.
Isaac contacts Mercer and informs him that he may have found evidence of a previous subterranean civilization on the planet. Unfortunately, the planet is beyond the point of sending down a landing party to investigate. Alara soon arrives with Bortus and Clyden. Ed informs Clyden of his punishment, but he and Bortus make a case that he was only following Mocklin customs. As a result, Ed changes the punitive action to having the two of them attend couples counseling with Dr. Finn.
You gotta be politically correct in some ways, and I think because it's Mocklin culture, you can't fault him for it.
Yeah, it's the same issues they had with Topa, because it is their custom and they're trying to be accepting, but also this is a union ship, so union rules. You can't go around stabbing people.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think, Clyden doesn't really follow union policy. Clyden's by Mocklin culture.
Yeah.
So I mean, Bortus stood up for Clyden though and said, throw my name in there because Clyden didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
He just was doing what's normal for us. But I'm so glad couples counseling was a thing that happened.
Also in this scene, I know how much you love the little details. How cool are the Soleil and Blossom whiskeys?
I wrote that down. I said the whiskeys, I know it was like just a small scene, but I love ink drop in water, like that kind of thing. And it was similar to that. So I was a fan of, I don't know, seeing just the cool things that are in the future.
Yeah.
And, yes, they're day drinking, but they're doing it in style. So I approve.
They just look so cool. It's such a cool concept to have like the swirl between the two drinks going on and everything. And I imagine it's something you almost have to have with somebody else or else it's just not the same.
Yeah, because one's red, one's blue.
Yep.
And I thought that. I was like, oh, wait, she said 2 Soleil and Blossom whiskeys. Why are they 2 different colors? And I just, like you said, I think it's like something you do together.
Yeah.
Like a headcanon thing there. You can only drink those together. So
in counseling, Claire explains what the purpose of the counseling is and takes them through a series of exercises. Clyden is particularly excited by the idea of a fun list.
Oh, yeah.
Clyden was great in these scenes.
He was. I did like when Bortus was like, do we select our own weapons? And I thought the dialogue and the writing in this scene was really good. And the way that it was delivered from Dr. Finn as well as Clyden and Bortus. I really enjoyed the interaction. And this is such a foreign concept to Bortus and Clyden and Mocklins. And I just really enjoyed seeing Clyden's actual excitement about a fun list.
Yeah, a fun list.
Yeah, he's like, this excites me.
Yeah.
And like when they leave and Clyden said, shall we make our fun list over dinner? It just made my heart happy because I was like, they might work it out. Like it might be okay.
As much as we saw Clyden like go to the extremes of stabbing him, he really does want this to work.
I think it's because he actually cares about Bortus.
Yeah.
Like he loves Bortus and that's where it all stems from. And it's hard to like see that when he's yelling all the time or the aggressive nature in which he communicates, but it's just who he is. And it comes from a place of caring.
Yeah. As much as I love the scene, I also had the thought too that like, is this the best use of Dr. Finn's time? Like, I know they wanted her to do this because she's one of the core cast and it makes sense to give her more screen time. But like from just a standpoint of there's got to be someone else more qualified to provide counseling on the ship than pulling the chief medical officer away from whatever she's doing.
There's not really a Deanna Troi of the ship
There isn't,
so far.
but-
So maybe Dr. Finn kind of fits in that.
But even like Nurse Park, because like you're taking the chief medical officer away.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because, like you said, there's obviously the screen time actors, like that kind of thing. But if it's because Bortus is a more ranking officer.
Maybe, but even like Picard or Riker would go to Troy and be like, hey,
True.
Like you're the counselor, this is your job.
I do think that's interesting, but maybe the ship's never really had to encounter something. It can't be the first marriage that hasn't been.
No, there's
look at Ed and
300
Kelly,
people on the ship. There's got to be somebody who can do it.
Maybe someday we'll meet the elusive Orville counselor, or they'll come aboard sometime soon.
Yeah. As they exit counseling and Clyden heads toward their quarters, Bortus heads right back to the simulator. Without a hesitation whatsoever. After being stabbed and brought back from the brink of death, no hesitation, just boom.
It's definitely an addiction. And he just, I mean, at this point, he can't control himself.
Mm-hmm.
But it is sad because so much just happened. And he's just like, whatever.
Yeah, he doesn't break stride.
No.
As soon as they part ways, that's where he's going. It's crazy.
It's later on, other things are revealed that make sense as to why. But it does not, for me, I'm like, you just got out of couples counseling.
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird time to be like, yep, time to go get my rocks off.
Yeah.
In the sim that caused all these problems in the first place. But at that point, he had not still been fully honest.
Mm-hmm. Bortus becomes bored with the simulation before it's complete and approaches Lieutenant Unk in engineering, knowing that his species is famous for creating highly sought-after pornographic simulations, because that's a good reputation to have.
Man.
He requests one that features many Mocklins all at once.
Willing to be adventurous.
Yes.
I loved the alien, Lieutenant Unk. Like, he was neat. That was a cool costume and
very different.
Yeah. It's just interesting that, you know, like a ranking officer is just like, can you get me some porn? And he's like, yeah, man, I got you. Like, it's just, and like, he was like, yeah, I'll get it to you really quick. And like, I can hook you up, no problem. And then they both just go back to work.
Do you want some pills too?
I know.
What? Nothing. Never mind.
That's just something where Bortus is in such a desperate place that he's putting his job on the line at this point.
I think that's what they're trying to show us, really, like his level of desperation just to satisfy this addiction that he has.
And boy, do those things have consequences.
Upon further investigation, Isaac discovers that the subterranean civilization is still active. Though audio only, Alara manages to create a link to communicate with them. Mercer speaks with Minister Thies and learns that the Nixian people sought refuge underground when they discovered that the sun would engulf their planet within 100 years. Ed says they'll do what they can to help, so John and Isaac make a plan to reinforce the shuttle deflectors so they can take the trip.
It's like a race against time for this now. It just like the stakes just like got higher.
Super quickly. Yeah, as soon as they realize that there are people down there.
Yeah.
And they were already like, we don't even have time to go investigate just for science sake, but now we need to go save people.
And it just added like the weight of the episode just got a lot heavier. And you realize like, oh, like I remembered this episode, but I remembered this part of the episode, but I didn't remember them being together.
Honestly, same.
And so then when I was watching it, I was like, damn, because there's just a lot that gets unraveled through the rest of this episode now because of that.
Yeah, very true. Lieutenant Unk delivers the program to Bortus, and he immediately heads to the simulator to use it. Meanwhile, in the mess hall, Gordon and John are attempting to get something to eat, but the food synthesizer generates a pile of sludge instead.
That looked disgusting.
Super disgusting. Yeah. And the fact that Gordon even touched it, I was like, oh, God.
Like, don't put your finger. You don't know what that is.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to see the allegory of the porn virus infiltrating this ship full of like 300 people and affecting the software and the ability to do things. But Bortus didn't think about that because he's just trying to.
He's got tunnel vision.
Especially with the situation that's now unfolding on the planet.
Yep.
Like not really a good time to have porn virus kind of take over things. So
really not.
Yeah.
In the simulator, Bortus is enjoying himself with a group of Mocklins when Clyden enters and catches him. Back in counseling, Claire talks to the two of them about porn addiction. Digging into the matter further, Bortus realizes that he holds resentment toward Clyden for the decision to make Topa undergo the procedure.
I feel for Clyden because he finds Bortus and that situation, and that's another where I'm like, oh, it's a simulation and not just like a computer. Like it's more visceral than walking in on somebody on a computer. So
oh yeah, I feel like even though I don't see it super different than like watching something from a technical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, I can see how someone would be way more offended by that.
Yeah. And because I believe Mocklins are so resilient, I think that helps in this situation. Clyden, I was proud of him. He just walked away. Like he could have murdered him again or did something. And like even in the counseling, he said, I would stab you again right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
I understand that Bortus has been upset about changing Topa, but the way he went about it still wasn't okay or healthy.
Agreed. Yeah. I do like that they are bringing that up again. I like that it wasn't just a one and done. Like a lot of Trek episodes wanted to be contained within their 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then when it was over, everything kind of reset back to where they were when they first started it.
Mm-hmm.
And things would come up here and there, but not nearly as much as they do on the Orville. So they're definitely bringing up things from past episodes that are like, yeah, everything was great at the end, but there's still this lingering thread that just hasn't gone away.
Yeah, and the honesty, though, I think is the first step for them healing. But I think Bortus was very guarded, and now it's manifested in a way that he can't hide it anymore.
Yeah. While Ed is checking in with Minister Thies, a weird glitch causes them to lose the connection. Gordon points out the glitch in the synthesizer, and Isaac runs a diagnostic between the two. He discovers a computer virus in the system, originating within the environmental simulator from a program uploaded by Bortus. Ed and Kelly head to the simulator to access the program and discover Bortus's cove of pleasure.
I won't lie, like, these were some of my favorite scenes just because, like, the simulation's still going to run and it's just Ed and Kelly and he's just walking up to them like, we just want to serve you kind of thing.
They're just like, wow.
Can you imagine, like, from a professional standpoint, how awkward that would be?
It's like leaving porn on your computer and then like leaving work for the day and someone goes back and turns your monitor on is like, whoa.
That is like the cringiest thing, and it made me go inside myself. Like,
Yeah.
It is what it is. And now they just got to deal with it.
Also, computer virus being attached to porn, not the newest concept, but totally makes sense here.
And I think it's a really neat, I know the concept of the episode is like porn addiction, but it's a neat concept to explore.
Yeah, to also have it, like you were saying, it's kind of like a way of saying, hey, this addiction is infecting everybody around you.
Mm-hmm. And the computer system in which we need to rely on. And now they have to fix it. But it also is interesting to show that even in the future, there's bad things attached to specific pornographic things. And it can still happen.
Yeah, it hasn't stopped yet. I was waiting for some sort of, there was going to be like a nefarious point to the virus and like Lieutenant Unk needed to go. Oh. And there was like a whole mission going on in the shadows, but I guess none of that happened.
No, I think he's still serving people up on the engineering. Gosh.
Hooking people up with all their needs.
All their pills. So.
In the briefing room, the senior staff discusses the issue. Isaac has written a program that should counter the virus. John reports that the shuttle is ready, but Dr. Finn points out that radiation levels will be lethal to anyone on the crew except for Isaac and Bortus. So the rescue mission is in their hands.
It was interesting, too, because in this meeting, Ed's like, we're going to have an awkward conversation later, Bortus. And he's like, I'm ashamed. And he's so stoic that you don't see it. But
yeah,
that would be so humiliating in a lot of ways. But he steps up now because he's got to go do this mission.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting that he has a radiation tolerance.
Moclans do have a very rugged exterior, so it does make sense for sure.
And their planet is so like just harsh that it makes sense that maybe they have that built in.
Yeah. As the shuttle makes its way to the planet, Isaac asks Bortus about his porn addiction and what the compulsion feels like. The two arrive on Nixia and meet its inhabitants.
The interaction between Isaac and Bortus was very interesting. And
it was.
In a way, I thought Bortus's explanation was very eloquent.
Yeah, it really was. It was interesting for him to explore that from such an intellectual level when he's in the grips of it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Isaac is just trying to understand it. And then he just says things, well, it's a good thing you're in therapy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that Bortus was even entertaining answering the question.
He was resistant at first, and then I think saw it as a way to kind of vent a little bit, knowing that Isaac would have no judgment.
Yeah. So it was just an interesting way to bridge a gap there, I think, and have a thoughtful discussion about it.
And it was a way to show, for the show to show some empathy for addiction in general.
I thought it was a really... Yeah, I actually thought that was a very nice way of describing addiction.
Yeah.
And like it was very thoughtful. And I mean, yeah, like it was lightened up right away with Isaac making a joke. But I thought that was a very well-written scene.
Yeah.
I am curious to know how it feels.
It is a call from deep within, like a baby seeking its mother's teat. It feels as if nothing else in the world matters but satisfying the urge and achieving the goal my body has demanded of me. Then, as quickly as it began, it is complete, leaving a worn-out shell in its wake. And the only feeling I am left with, the only thing I know, is that a death has occurred.
I see. It is prudent that you are in therapy. Prepare for landing.
Back on the Orville, the virus continues to spread despite Isaac's counter program. At the same time, Gordon's scans show that the planet is breaking up faster than they expected.
Yeah, it's just the time accelerated, and now they only have time for one trip.
The ticking clock just started speeding up on the bomb like you see in movies. Like it's going normal, and then all of a sudden someone pulls the wrong wire and it just starts speeding up. That's where we are now.
Yeah, and I just remember during this episode going like, wait, they really only can... Because in a lot of shows, they save everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode, they can't save everybody. And that, I think, illustrated something important to Bortus, but also from an audience perspective, that's heavy.
It was a bold choice.
Yeah. They are still trying to rescue people, but she had to do a lottery and pick specific people who could go. And her husband and her own child she sent without herself because she wanted someone else to go. It's just...
Yep.
That whole thing, while it's being kind of like a B storyline, was still very powerful.
Yeah. There's a quick exchange here that I actually really like, just the delivery of it. When Gordon was like, Captain, we have another problem. And Ed's response of, oh, neat. What is it? Like so frustrated, like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's just stuff is not working out on their side. And now they have to make some hard decisions.
I just really enjoyed that line delivery. Isaac informs Bortus of the news from the Orville. Despite the 75 people they've come to rescue, the accelerated breakup of the planet leaves time for only one trip, which will only save 30 of them. The Nixians decide to use a random lottery process to choose their 30, and they load them onto the shuttle. Thee says goodbye to her family as Bortus looks on. The shuttle departs the planet moments before it's completely destroyed.
And that's when you realize, like, these people are now gone.
Yeah.
There is an interesting moment, though, where Bortus looks back for quite a while. Like, kind of, I think he's reconciling things and realizing some things within himself that need to change. Like, it's a pivotal moment for him as a character.
Yeah. And there's been some emotional stuff on the show to this point, but I think watching Thies say goodbye to her family is probably like the saddest thing we've seen so far.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, I don't know, like, I can't even find words for it because, like, she's so at peace with it, and then he's obviously not, but she wants him to have a future, and she's choosing to not. Like, it's a final goodbye. You will never see that person again.
Right.
And you know that they're dead.
It's so heavy.
I know.
With the shuttle back on the Orville, Mercer orders them to depart, but Gordon reports that Helm is not responding due to the virus. The planet's gravity well is pulling the ship in. With 6 minutes to their own destruction, Isaac makes his way to the simulator to assist Lamar. Isaac successfully destroys the virus, restoring control of the helm, and Gordon steers the ship away just in time.
Way to go, Bortus. No, like, of course, the timing of this. And then I will say, our good friend Dan is back. I noticed you didn't mention Dan. Hi, I'm Dan.
Oh, God.
I love Dan. But just that John and Dan are in there trying to fix it, and the Mocklins are just like all over them was hysterical to me.
I love that one of them grabbed John's butt and he just smacks him away. He's like, I don't have time for this right now.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not thirsty. And then when Isaac goes in there and they're like licking Isaac's helmet.
It's so ridiculous.
But it's funny because the program is just for that purpose and they don't know that. And it's just comedically, it's funny, but like the tension's high.
Yeah. It's actually a time where I thought the comedy and the tension meshed really well.
Can you imagine the actors? Like, this is another thing, like the Mocklin body makeup, how long that must have taken.
Oh, yeah.
But just on top of it, it was funny. Like they did a good job.
Yeah. In sickbay, Dr. Finn examines Bortus and gives him a clean bill of health. Mercer is justifiably angry with him and how he selfishly put the entire crew in danger. Bortus tenders his resignation, but Ed rejects it. Instead, he commends Bortus for bravely putting his own life on the line to save 30 others.
I wonder what you think about this.
Ed's response to it?
Mm-hmm.
It's, oh boy. The fact that, Bortus did his job, but that's also Bortus's job.
Mm-hmm.
Putting your life on the line. That's what they do. So the fact that he did it is super heroic, but it's also what's expected. He did jeopardize the entire crew.
Yeah.
And the ship. But at the same time, I think Ed realizes that it's the addiction. He can't hold Bortus 100% responsible for something that is possibly out of Bortus's control.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that I think also by the fact that he was resigning, that shows his remorse.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of just being like, well, I'll be on work tomorrow or whatever, it was like, I'm ready to leave because I know what I did. So I think that probably played a part in it also.
Totally. It shows that he gets it.
Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting because he did put the ship at risk, but I think there's a lot of pieces to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think Bortus realized, like, I screwed up and embarrassed myself. And I think one of the easiest ways to learn a lesson is to publicly humiliate yourself. So
yeah. The fact that nobody did die as a result, people on the planet, but that's not a result of the virus.
No.
That didn't actually affect their ability to save the people they could.
Can you imagine if that was why all those people died? Oh,
If that were the reason, then Bortus, you're gone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But the fact that they all came out unscathed in the end, I think makes it easier to be like, okay, well, you screwed up, but we made it through. So
Yeah.
Back in his quarters, Bortus apologizes to Clyden for being a bad mate. He goes on to say that he may never fully be at peace with what happened to Topa, but based on recent events, he realizes how fortunate he is to have them both in his life.
Yeah, it's probably more of a just kind of reconcile what happened, and you have to move forward and you can't fix it now. So you just kind of have to make the best of it. But I am glad that they worked things out because I do think Clyden and Bortus are a fun couple. And I also root for Topa. So
you want to make sure he gets raised right.
He's got to get raised right.
Too messed up.
Yeah.
Okay, then. What is your final takeaway from Primal Urges?
For an episode that is essentially based on porn addiction, I thought it was really well done and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well written. Like I said, with the shuttle conversation with Isaac, it's very eloquent at times. It could have been very crude. And as much as you can be with erotic simulations, it was still very classy. I don't know. It was done in a way that was tasteful and funny. And also, the episode had a lot of deeper meaning, deeper discussions than you would expect from something of this topic. Because it deals with, yes, porn addiction, but there's the whole stuff on the planet, then the marriage aspect of things and dealing with issues within that. And it wasn't just that, oh, I'm addicted to porn. It was because of things that have happened in season 1 with Topa. Yep. And I really liked the callbacks to things, but the character development I thought was really good. And I just felt like it was an episode that could have been really crude, but they did a good job with it.
Agreed. From a general audience standpoint, believe it or not, this is the lowest rated episode of the series.
It's probably people getting upset about things.
That's what I think. I certainly don't agree with it being the lowest because we both watched Cupid's Dagger.
Yeah.
And this is not Cupid's Dagger.
No.
This is way better than that.
I think it's just people getting upset about things.
Yeah, I think so too. It is, like you said, it's crazy to me how much this episode actually includes. We get one of the saddest moments we've seen so far with Minister Thies and her family. And we get one of the most tense situations we've seen with the ticking clock of the planet and the Orville hurtling toward it. Like, that was high tension.
Yeah.
And we've had some high tension stuff, but I feel like this was like the peak so far of that. And that's all in an episode with Bortus's porn addiction.
Yeah.
Like, it is all over the place, and maybe that's what a lot of people felt. But honestly, I felt it just really did a nice job of illustrating the full scope of what this show can do.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's an episode where we're mostly talking about this guy's porn addiction, but also here's a small civilization where half of them are going to die, and some of the family members have to say bye to each other, and we're putting the ship in a ticking clock, like, super dangerous situation. Like, the fact that they could weave all of that together is incredibly impressive.
It is. It could have gotten very messy along the way, and it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that is difficult to do.
Yeah. I even give him credit because, like you said, we have not seen someone explore this kind of topic before. And I give them credit for taking a joke that people have been making about the holodeck for years.
Yeah.
And turning that into an actual plot line that meant something.
That's something I mean, like I said, it could have been done really crudely and like kind of like distasteful, if you will. And it just wasn't. It was done in a way that showcases addiction. And yes, a humorous way, but how it can also be detrimental to relationships and your job. Like, it just has like so many layers to it. I've not seen an episode like this anywhere. No.
And it was very well executed. So whatever the general consensus is, I certainly don't agree with it. I thought this episode was very enjoyable. It was very successful in what it sought out to do. And again, the visuals were just amazing.
Yeah. The CGI looked really good in this episode.
Yeah. Now, something we hadn't talked about with this episode yet is that this is the leftover from season 1. And there is some evidence in this, and there were some reshots done to make it work for season 2. So, like, they left us on a very kind of cliffhanger with the last episode. We don't see Lieutenant Tyler here.
No.
We don't see Cassius here. So, like, all that is left behind. But they had to reshoot scenes with a grown-up Topa because that wouldn't have been in season 1. And apparently there was also in the mess hall, they had to reshoot some scenes in there because they completely changed the tables between season 1 and season 2.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that would have been an inconsistency that they had to take care of.
Yeah, and people would notice.
They would.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it flowed well, though, with this season.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is Primal Urges. But before we get out of here, we have one more thing to do because Katie's husband, Mark, is a fan of the Orville as well and always leaves us with his one-sentence review.
Best line of the episode. And the only feeling I am left with, the only thing I know, is that death has occurred. Or, hi, I'm Dan.
Quantum Drive is a production of the Geek Generation. If you like this show, be sure to check out our other podcasts on the Geek Generation Network at thegeekgeneration.com.
If you'd like to support the show and get access to exclusive bonus podcasts along with other perks, you can visit our Patreon campaign at thegeekgeneration.com/support.
You can follow Quantum Drive on Twitter at Quantum Drive Pod and me at TheRobLogan.
You can follow me on Twitter at PlayKatiePlay and on Twitch at Katie Peters Plays, and Katie is spelled Katie.
Please rate the show and write a review on Apple Podcasts. If you do, we may read your review on an upcoming episode.
Finally, questions and comments can be sent to quantumdrive@thegeekgeneration.com.
We're out of here for now, but we'll see you soon in the future.